I was Daniel Miller, 24 years old, living in Riverside, California, a place where the sun always seemed to shine, even when my life felt a little cloudy. My world revolved around my wife, Sarah, and our son, Mateo, who was just a few months old. He was the reason I was working so hard, juggling 2 jobs to make ends meet and give them the best life I possibly could. One of those jobs was the evening shift at a small, independent liquor store called Riverside Spirits, a local gem known for its wide selection and friendly owner, Mr. Henderson. Most nights, the job was good. I enjoyed the rhythm of stocking shelves, helping customers find their favorite craft beer or a special bottle of wine, and the quiet satisfaction of closing up shop around midnight. Mr. Henderson was a real stand-up guy, easygoing and always appreciative of my hard work. My coworkers were a decent bunch too, and we often shared a laugh about the quirks of the job. But there was one huge shadow hanging over my shifts, a dark cloud in my otherwise peaceful work sky. Her name was Barbara. Barbara was a woman in her 50s who fancied herself the manager, though everyone knew Mr. Henderson was the only true boss. She was territorial, always had a sour look on her face, and for some reason, from the moment I started, she took an instant, inexplicable dislike to me. I tried to be friendly, professional, even offered to help her with tasks, but nothing worked. She saw me as an intruder, a threat to her little kingdom, and she made my life a living hell with her constant nitpicking and snide remarks. I couldn't figure it out, and even her teenage daughter, who also worked there sometimes, would shrug and say she didn't understand her mom's attitude toward me. I just wanted to do my job, provide for my family, and get home to Sarah and Mateo without Barbara's negativity weighing me down. I tried my best to ignore Barbara, to focus on the good parts of the job, the friendly regulars, and the fact that the pay really helped us out with Mateo's diapers and formula. I swallowed her petty complaints about the way I faced the bottles on the shelves or how I organized the display fridge. She'd leave me passive-aggressive notes about things I'd supposedly done wrong, even though she wasn't my supervisor. She'd make pointed comments about my work ethic in front of other employees or even customers, always implying I was lazy or careless. It was infuriating, but I told myself it wasn't worth causing trouble. I needed this job, and I wasn't going to let one bitter woman chase me away. Mr. Henderson saw some of it, I'm sure, but he relied on Barbara for a lot of the day-to-day operations, and he seemed to avoid any kind of conflict, so he never stepped in. The stress of dealing with Barbara started to seep into my home life. I was already exhausted from working multiple jobs and waking up with Mateo in the middle of the night, but Barbara's constant attacks added another layer of mental drain. I found myself snapping at Sarah over small things or being too tired to fully enjoy my limited time with Mateo. Sarah noticed, of course, and she'd ask if everything was okay at work. I'd just shrug and say Barbara was being Barbara, trying to downplay it, but it was chipping away at me. I was a young father doing my best, and this woman was making me feel small and incompetent. It felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells, dreading every shift where I knew she'd be around. Then came the spilled milk incident, the moment everything reached its boiling point. One evening, after a particularly long and tiring day that started with a feeding at 3 in the morning, I was putting away a dairy delivery. I must have been more exhausted than I realized, because one of the milk cartons had a tiny leak that I completely missed in the dim light of the back room. I stacked it away, sealed the fridge, and went home, looking forward to a few hours of sleep before Mateo's next wake-up call. The next morning, Barbara was the one who opened the store. She discovered the small puddle of milk that had slowly spread from the leaking carton, creating a sticky, sour mess on the bottom shelf of the fridge. When I showed up for my evening shift, Barbara was waiting for me. She was fuming, her face red and contorted with rage. She didn't even wait for me to clock in. She launched into a public tirade right there behind the checkout counter where a few early morning customers were still milling around. She shouted, accusing me of gross negligence, calling me irresponsible, saying I had no business working with perishables. She even implied that I had done it on purpose, that I was trying to sabotage the store. Her voice was shrill, cutting through the usual quiet hum of the store, and every word felt like a personal attack on my character, on my ability to provide for my family. I stood there for a moment, listening to her berate me, my face burning with humiliation and anger. All the frustration, all the silent enduring of her petty cruelty, it all just snapped. I looked her dead in the eye, and with the biggest, most innocent-looking smile I could possibly muster, I said, loud enough for everyone in the store to hear, "Hasn't anyone ever told you that you shouldn't cry over spilled milk?" The silence that followed was deafening. Her face went from red to a terrifying shade of purple, her eyes narrowing into daggers. I knew right then and there that I had pushed her too far. That sarcastic smile, that perfectly timed, flippant comment, it shattered her self-important demeanor. She looked like she wanted to physically assault me. I could feel the hatred radiating off her. It was a small victory, a moment of pure, unadulterated satisfaction, but it also made it clear that I couldn't stay. This job, which was supposed to be a stepping stone for my family, had become a toxic battleground. I needed out, but I wasn't going to just quietly disappear. I wanted a little bit of my own back. I went home that night, still buzzing from the confrontation, but also with a new resolve. I knew I couldn't continue working in such a hostile environment. The stress was too much, and I needed to protect my peace of mind for Sarah and Mateo. I decided I had to find another job, and fast. But as I thought about leaving, a mischievous idea started to form in my mind. I couldn't just leave quietly. Barbara had made my life miserable for months. She deserved a little taste of her own medicine, a perfectly timed parting gift. The next day, I started my job search with a vengeance. I updated my resume, polished my cover letters, and sent out applications to every promising lead I could find. I went on several interviews, all while pretending everything was normal at Riverside Spirits, enduring Barbara's icy glares and silent treatment. I kept my head down, worked diligently, and made sure there was absolutely nothing she could complain about. I was plotting, and the thought of my upcoming revenge filled me with a quiet determination. Then, one afternoon, as I was walking through the back room, I saw it. On the wall calendar, tacked up next to the cleaning schedule, was a bright red circle around 2 weeks in the middle of next month. Inside the circle, scrawled in Barbara's distinct, aggressive handwriting, were the words, "Vacation Arizona Sister." A slow smile spread across my face. This was it. This was my window, my perfect opportunity to truly get even. Barbara, the queen of control, the self-proclaimed indispensable manager, was about to have her plans thrown into chaos by the very person she tried so hard to diminish. I found a new job. It was a fantastic opportunity at a distribution center, offering better pay, stable hours, and most importantly, an early evening finish that would allow me to spend more time with Mateo before his bedtime. It was everything I had been hoping for, a real upgrade for my family. The new job wanted me to start in exactly 2 weeks. I did the math in my head, and a triumphant grin couldn't be held back. My last day at Riverside Spirits would be the day before Barbara was scheduled to start her 2-week vacation. The timing was absolutely perfect. The next day, with a lightness in my step I hadn't felt in months, I walked into Mr. Henderson's office. He was sitting at his desk, going over invoices. I told him I had found another opportunity and needed to put in my 2 weeks' notice. He looked genuinely surprised and a little disappointed. He said he was sorry to see me go, that I was a great worker. I thanked him for the opportunity and explained that the new job offered better hours for my young family. As I was explaining, the door to the office, which was slightly ajar, swung open. Barbara stood there, a stack of invoices in her hand, her ears clearly perked up by our conversation. She must have heard me mention leaving. A smug, knowing smirk spread across her face. She thought she had won, that she had driven me out. Mr. Henderson saw her standing there and sighed. "Barbara, come in for a moment," he said. He turned to me. "Daniel, you're sure about this?" I nodded, keeping a neutral expression, but inside I was practically buzzing. "Yes, sir," I replied. "My last day will be exactly 2 weeks from today." Mr. Henderson turned to Barbara, who was still wearing her smug expression. "Barbara, I have some news. Daniel is leaving us in 2 weeks." Barbara's smirk widened, and she shot me a triumphant, hateful glance. Then Mr. Henderson continued, his voice serious. "Which means, unfortunately, we'll be short-staffed, especially for the evening shifts and closings. So I'm afraid your vacation, the one scheduled for 2 weeks from now, will have to be postponed. We simply can't afford to lose 2 staff members at once, even for a short time. We'll need you here until we can find a replacement for Daniel and get them properly trained." I watched Barbara's face. The smugness evaporated in an instant, replaced by shock, then disbelief. Her eyes, those same eyes that had glared at me with such fury, widened, then narrowed into absolute daggers. But this time they weren't just aimed at me. They were also aimed at Mr. Henderson, the man who had just delivered the news that her carefully planned, much-anticipated vacation was ruined. Her jaw dropped, and a strangled sound escaped her throat. She looked utterly devastated, her plans shattered by a consequence she never saw coming. It was beautiful, I couldn't help it. I met her furious gaze and gave her the biggest, most innocent, most knowing smile I could possibly muster, a silent echo of my spilled milk retort. It was my final act, my perfectly timed, poetic revenge. She had tried to make my life miserable, to control my time, and in the end, her own time, her own cherished plans were completely derailed because of me. My last 2 weeks at Riverside Spirits flew by. Barbara didn't speak a single word to me, her glares enough to melt steel, but I just smiled internally. I worked hard, leaving no room for her to complain, and focused on the exciting future awaiting me. When my final shift ended, I said goodbye to Mr. Henderson and my friendly coworkers, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't realized was so heavy. My new job at the distribution center was everything I had hoped for and more. The pay was better, the hours were perfect, allowing me to be home for dinner and to help put Mateo to bed most nights. Sarah and I felt a renewed sense of peace and stability. I learned a valuable lesson about standing up for myself, and about how sometimes the most effective revenge isn't a loud confrontation, but a quiet, precisely calculated move that leaves your tormentor reeling. I was more confident, more secure in my ability to navigate tough situations and protect my family's well-being. Weeks later, I was pushing Mateo in his stroller through a local park, enjoying a rare sunny afternoon off. We stopped by a small, slightly run-down convenience store to grab a bottle of water. As I walked past the counter, I glanced inside, and there she was, Barbara. She was behind the counter, looking much older, more tired, and completely defeated. She was wearing a faded, ill-fitting uniform, and her hair was a mess. She was arguing with a customer about a lottery ticket, her voice still sharp, but lacking the authoritative bite it once had. Her self-proclaimed kingdom at Riverside Spirits had clearly crumbled. Maybe Mr. Henderson had finally seen her true colors after my departure, or maybe her own sour attitude had caught up to her. Whatever the reason, she was a shadow of her former self, stuck in a dead-end job, her bitter spirit still poisoning the air around her. I just smiled, tightened my grip on Mateo's stroller, and walked out into the sunshine, knowing I had truly moved on to a better place.